The world we know today was not always this way. There was a time, long before our written records, before our monuments, before we even called ourselves civilized, when something extraordinary walked the earth. A forgotten chapter of humanity's story, erased not by time, but by catastrophe. Imagine the planet around 11,000 BC, a world frozen in silence, where the last ice age still gripped the northern lands. Vast glaciers stretched across continents, towering miles high, shaping valleys, redirecting rivers, and holding enough water to drown entire coastlines. But beneath that frozen sky, something stirred, cities that would vanish, knowledge that would be lost, and beings who would later be remembered only as gods. What if everything we've been taught about the origins of civilization is wrong? What if humanity did not begin in mud huts along the Nile or between the rivers of Mesopotamia, but long before that, in an age of light, of stone, and of impossible knowledge? The ancient myths all speak of a golden age, an era when gods walked among mortals, when giants built cities of unimaginable scale, and when mankind knew secrets of the earth and sky that even modern science struggles to comprehend. But myths are just stories, aren't they? Or are they memories? Distorted, stretched across millennia, surviving like whispers from a world long drowned? If we follow the fragments left behind, scattered across deserts, mountains, and the seafloor, a pattern begins to emerge. Ruins that shouldn't exist. Precision that defies primitive tools. Global alignments no ancient tribe should have known. They all point to one time, one date, one catastrophic end. Around 11,000 BC. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas boundary, a sudden, world-shattering event that ended the Ice Age. Temperatures spiked, oceans rose, forests burned, species vanished, and somewhere in that chaos, something else disappeared too. Archaeologists speak of a missing civilization, a culture too advanced to fit the timeline, a civilization erased, its memory encoded in myth. Could this have been the age of gods and giants, an era lost beneath the sands and ice of time? Let's explore what traces remain. In the highlands of Turkey lies a site called Göbekli Tepe, carved and buried nearly 12,000 years ago. The stones are massive, some weighing more than 10 tons, arranged in circles, decorated with animals, symbols, and stars. Archaeologists admit they don't know who built it or why. It predates every known civilization by thousands of years, yet it demonstrates architecture, astronomy, and sacred geometry that should have been impossible for hunter-gatherers. So how could such people design a temple that tracks the solstice, aligns to the stars, and encodes complex mathematical relationships? Unless they weren't just hunter-gatherers. Unless they were the descendants of something greater. What if Göbekli Tepe wasn't the beginning of civilization, but its rebirth? Now imagine this. Before the floodwaters rose, before the sky burned and the continents shifted, there existed cities of shining stone and towering temples. Legends call it Atlantis, Zep-Tepi, Shambhala, names that echo through every culture on Earth. Different words, same story. An age of harmony between gods and men. An age destroyed overnight. What could have wiped out such a civilization so completely that history forgot it ever existed? Evidence points to a cosmic impact, a rain of fire from the heavens. Around 10,800 BC, a swarm of fragments, possibly from a disintegrating comet, struck the northern hemisphere. In an instant, the Ice Age ended. Glaciers melted. Oceans swallowed coastlines. An entire world vanished beneath the sea. The survivors would remember this as the wrath of the gods. A flood so vast it drowned memory itself. But memory has a strange way of surviving. In ancient texts from Mesopotamia to the Andes, there are whispers of those who came after the flood. Teachers, builders, astronomers, described as giants or gods, who brought knowledge from the stars. They carried with them the remnants of forgotten science, geometry, architecture, celestial understanding, the same principles later found in Egypt, Sumer, and Mesoamerica. Who were they? Refugees of a lost world? The last survivors of a forgotten civilization? Or something not entirely human? The stories call them many names. The Nephilim of Genesis, the Anunnaki of Sumer, the Watchers of the Book of Enoch, the Titans of Greece, and the gods of Zep-Tepi in Egypt. Different cultures, different continents, but the same archetype. Beings of enormous height, radiant power, and immense wisdom, who taught mankind the arts of civilization. But here's the deeper question. If they were myths, why do the stories match so precisely across oceans, across millennia? Could it be that the flood didn't just erase a civilization? It erased the memory of the species that built it? Picture a time when the skies were filled with fragments of a shattered comet, when fire rained on ice and continents trembled. In that chaos, imagine a few survivors, those who knew what was coming. They preserved what they could. They built temples aligned to the stars, monuments that would outlast the flood. They encoded warnings in stone, a message for the future. Göbekli Tepe, the Great Pyramids, the Sphinx, Tiwanaku, all pointing to the same celestial coordinates, as if marking the date of a cosmic disaster that ended their world. Could these ancient monuments be memorials to a civilization that once mastered the science of the stars? A civilization that fell, leaving behind echoes we still don't understand? This is the mystery of 11,000 BC, the age of gods, giants, and forgotten science. A time erased by fire and flood, yet remembered in myth. A time when man and something more than man walked the same earth. And as we continue, we'll uncover the traces they left, the impossible evidence that refuses to vanish. We'll explore the ruins that shouldn't exist, the mathematics no primitive mind could have known, and the myths that may be more history than fiction. Because the truth of this forgotten age may be written not in words, but in stone, stars, and silence. Close your eyes and imagine the earth not as we know it now, but as it was more than 13,000 years ago, at the very end of the last ice age. The air was colder, the nights were darker, the world itself was different, wilder, heavier, and alive with things long extinct. Massive glaciers covered most of North America, Northern Europe, and parts of Asia. They towered like frozen mountain ranges, walls of ancient ice stretching from horizon to horizon. Oceans were smaller, continents larger. Land bridges connected places we can only cross by sea today. Britain was attached to Europe. Alaska touched Siberia. Australia reached out toward New Guinea. And across these vast frozen lands, the wind carried secrets, whispers of civilizations clinging to the edge of survival. At that time, humanity was not scattered tribes alone. There were clusters of people who hunted mammoths and painted caves, but there were also those who watched the stars. Even then, humanity looked upward, mapping constellations with a precision that puzzles even modern astronomers. The people of 11,000 BC did not live under ignorance. They lived under a sky they understood deeply, maybe more deeply than we do. The North Star was different. The constellations slowly drifted across the heavens due to Earth's wobble, what we now call precession. And yet somehow many ancient monuments, even ones built millennia later, are aligned perfectly to the positions of the stars as they would have appeared around 11,000 BC. Coincidence? Or memory? Scientists tell us that people back then were hunter-gatherers, struggling to survive. But scattered across the world, evidence tells a more complex story. Signs of construction, mapping, and even technology that shouldn't exist for another 8,000 years. Deep under the waters near Yonaguni, off the coast of Japan, lie giant stone terraces and platforms carved from bedrock. They form steps, pillars, and pathways, an entire city swallowed by the sea. Mainstream archaeology dismisses it as natural erosion, but the right angles, the symmetry, the patterns, they whisper otherwise. If sea levels rose dramatically after 11,000 BC, as we know they did, then perhaps Yonaguni isn't a natural wonder, but a window into that lost world. Across the globe, under the Atlantic waves near the Azores, sonar readings detect what appears to be rectangular foundations, vast and regular, buried beneath the silt. Off the coast of India, divers found structures near Dvarka, far older than any temple on land. In the Caribbean, satellite scans have revealed shapes resembling pyramids and roads, aligned with precision. Everywhere we look, at the bottom of the sea, beneath desert sands, in jungles reclaimed by time, we find ruins that should not be there. If they're not natural, then they belong to something we've forgotten. But what kind of world would that have been? To imagine 11,000 BC is to imagine a planet in transition, not quite frozen, not yet thawed. It was a world balanced on the edge of change. Mammoths still roamed the tundra. Saber-toothed cats hunted in the shadows of melting glaciers. Vast herds of bison thundered across plains. But on the horizon, the sun grew stronger, the ice weaker. The earth was waking up. And in that awakening, something extraordinary happened, the first flowering of knowledge. Archaeologists at Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe in modern-day Turkey describe architecture too advanced for its supposed era, carvings of lions, scorpions, and celestial patterns that match the night sky of 10,950 BC exactly. The builders understood astronomy. They tracked solstices. They measured precession, a 26,000-year cycle only modern science has confirmed. So who taught them? And why did they carve it there, at the very dawn of civilization? Legends from Mesopotamia, Egypt, and even South America speak of beings who arrived after the darkness, bringing agriculture, laws, and architecture. They are described as tall, radiant, and wise, the ones who measured the heavens. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. The Egyptians called them the Neteru. The Greeks called them Titans. The Maya remembered them as serpent gods, bringers of science and the calendar. Each story different, each culture unique, and yet the same core remains, that once, long ago, something descended from the sky and lifted humanity up. If it was just myth, why does it repeat everywhere? There's another question scientists don't like to ask. How could so many megalithic sites across the world share the same architectural principles? Massive stone blocks, perfectly cut, aligned, and transported, built with mathematical ratios and astronomical precision. Sites like Tiwanaku in Bolivia, Sacsayhuaman in Peru, Baalbek in Lebanon, and of course Giza in Egypt. Each displays knowledge of pi, phi, and Earth's dimensions, knowledge supposedly discovered only in modern times. Yet the same geometry, the same understanding of energy and balance, appears across continents. How? Coincidence? Or a shared inheritance from a world that existed before the flood? Imagine the lost world before the cataclysm. Not a futuristic civilization with machines and steel, but a culture built around harmony with nature, sound, and geometry. Their science wasn't mechanical, it was harmonic. They understood resonance, how vibration shapes matter, how sound can move stone, how patterns mirror the cosmos. It sounds like fantasy, but every ancient temple, every sacred site, sings the same note. When struck, they vibrate in perfect frequencies. Acoustics were not an accident, they were intentional. Was this forgotten science, a technology based not on metal or engines, but on the physics of harmony? The builders of 11,000 BC may have known secrets about energy, magnetism, and the Earth itself that we're only rediscovering today. But then, something changed, something catastrophic. The world that nurtured that knowledge began to collapse. The air grew heavy with ash. The sun dimmed. The ice melted faster. Oceans rose higher. The climate shifted so violently that entire regions became uninhabitable in a matter of decades. Those who survived fled, carrying their knowledge to new lands, starting over. And as they rebuilt, their memories turned to stories. Their science turned to legend. The builders became gods. Their survivors, us. The world of 11,000 BC was not primitive. It was a bridge between the ancient and the modern, the mythical and the real. A world where giants of knowledge once walked, and where humanity first began to remember. Because perhaps civilization didn't begin in one place at one time. Perhaps it began again, after everything was lost. And that brings us to the greatest question of all. What destroyed that world? Was it nature? Was it cosmic? Or was it something even stranger? As we move forward, we'll explore the disaster that changed everything, the fire that erased an entire age and gave birth to ours, the mystery of the great cataclysm, the moment the age of gods and giants was buried beneath the waves. The air is still, the ice groans, and then silence breaks. Somewhere above the frozen horizon, the sky begins to burn. What happened around 11,000 BC was not a slow change. It was sudden, violent, final. Across the northern hemisphere, night turned to fire. For a few terrible hours, the heavens rained light. What followed was a chain of destruction that no memory could contain and no story could fully explain. The day the ice melted. Modern science calls it the Younger Dryas boundary event, a planetary tipping point that ended the last ice age almost overnight. Temperatures rose by nearly 10 degrees in less than a human lifetime. Glaciers, mountains of ice that had stood for millennia, melted and collapsed. Whole rivers changed direction. Oceans surged inland, drowning coastlines thousands of kilometers wide. The world's climate system cracked like glass under a hammer. But the deeper question remains: what caused it? Fire from the sky. In 2007, a team of geologists studying black layers of ash across North America discovered something extraordinary. Microscopic glass beads, nanodiamonds, and traces of iridium, materials formed only under extreme heat, the kind created by an impact or atmospheric explosion. These layers all dated to the same moment, roughly 12,800 years ago, the exact beginning of the Younger Dryas. The evidence pointed to a cosmic intruder, a fragmented comet or asteroid entering Earth's atmosphere, exploding in dozens of places, setting forests ablaze, and throwing dust high into the stratosphere. The result? A short, brutal winter of darkness, followed by catastrophic warming. Ice melted, megafauna perished, and entire ecosystems vanished. If a civilization had thrived before that day, it would have been erased in weeks. The floods that erased memory. As the glaciers disintegrated, meltwater floods poured across continents with the force of inland oceans. In North America, torrents the size of seas carved out the Great Lakes, the Columbia Gorge, and the Scablands of Washington. In Europe, rivers burst from ice dams and swept away entire valleys. Sea levels rose more than 400 feet worldwide. Anything built along ancient coastlines, cities, ports, temples, now sleeps beneath the waves. And everywhere humanity survived, it remembered that moment as the flood. In Mesopotamia, it became the tale of Utnapishtim, later retold as Noah's Ark. In India, the god Vishnu warned Manu of rising waters. In the Andes, the god Viracocha rebuilt the world after a deluge. In every language, one memory endures. A world destroyed by water from the sky. Different names. Same story. The extinction of giants. When the ice melted, the giants of the natural world disappeared. The mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats, the enormous ground sloths. But in myth, another kind of giant fell too. The Nephilim of the Hebrew texts, the Titans of Greece, the Jotun of the Norse sagas, all destroyed in a single generation, swept away by the wrath of the heavens. If we strip away the divine language, the pattern is clear. The old world ended, and its greatest beings, real or symbolic, were lost. Perhaps giants did not mean size alone, but greatness, the bearers of an ancient science, erased when the earth reset itself. The aftermath. In the centuries that followed, survivors wandered through chaos. Volcanic ash dimmed the sunlight. Crops failed. Sea levels kept rising. Humanity shrank to pockets of memory, tribes carrying fragments of lost knowledge. Then, slowly, the world stabilized. Forests grew again. The ice retreated northward. And from the ruins, something miraculous happened. People began to build. They built stone circles, temples, and markers that faced the sky, perhaps to honor what had been lost, or to warn those who would come later. Göbekli Tepe was one of the first. Its builders buried it deliberately, as if sealing away a secret until the world was ready to remember. Echoes of the event. In the melt layers of Greenland's ice cores, scientists still find a thin band of soot and platinum, the fingerprint of the fire. In the Sahara, glassy deserts called Libyan desert glass shimmer across the dunes, formed when sand fused under unimaginable heat. In North America, burned bones of mammoths lie beneath that same black mat of ash. Everywhere the evidence tells the same silent story. Something struck Earth at the dawn of history. And yet, the most haunting clue isn't found in rock, but in architecture. From Egypt to Peru, from Turkey to Indonesia, the oldest temples all align with the same constellation, Orion, as it appeared around 10,500 BC. As if the survivors were marking the sky on the night their world ended. The message in stone. What if these alignments were not coincidence, but remembrance? What if the ancients encoded the coordinates of that disaster in their monuments, so future generations would never forget? When we look at the pyramids, the Sphinx, or the temples at Teotihuacan, we might not be seeing worship, but warning, a message from the survivors of the Great Cataclysm. We were here. We saw the sky burn. Remember us. The promise of rebirth. Out of destruction came renewal. The myths say the gods returned after the flood, not as conquerors but as teachers. They brought agriculture, calendars, architecture. They taught humanity how to measure time, track the heavens, and build again. Perhaps they were not gods at all, but the remnants of that lost civilization, rebuilding the world from ashes. If that's true, then every temple, every megalith, every myth is a fragment of their memory. Pieces of a story almost too large for history to contain. The Great Cataclysm was not the end of the world. It was the end of a world, and from its silence, a new humanity emerged. One that would call its ancestors gods, giants, and bringers of forgotten science. But if those survivors rebuilt, where did they go next? What knowledge did they carry forward? And what traces of their power still remain, hidden in plain sight? In the next chapter, we search for them, the builders of knowledge, the ones who remembered everything the flood was meant to erase. When the fire faded, when the floods retreated, when silence returned to a broken earth, a handful of survivors began to rebuild. They carried with them memory, not tools, knowledge, not weapons. They were the last keepers of a dying science, a wisdom so old, so advanced, that to the scattered tribes they encountered, they must have seemed like gods. They are known by many names: the 7 sages of Mesopotamia, the Shebti of Egypt, the Viracocha of the Andes, the feathered serpents of Mesoamerica. Different faces, different lands, same story. They came after the flood. They built, they taught, and then they vanished. But what exactly did they build? The new dawn. Archaeologists believe that civilization began suddenly around 9,500 BC, right after the Younger Dryas ended. Agriculture appeared almost overnight. Cities followed. Language, measurement, geometry, calendars all emerged in a few short centuries. Before that, nothing. No cities, no writing, no temples. How could humanity leap from survival to science in one generation? If we had lost everything, who taught us how to start again? The memory of the sages. The ancient Sumerians spoke of beings called the Apkallu, those of great understanding. They were half human, half divine. They rose from the sea after the flood and taught humans writing, law, and architecture. In Egypt, temple walls describe the Shebti, followers of Thoth, who came from a sacred island swallowed by water. They brought mathematics, measurement, and sacred building techniques, the knowledge to raise pyramids that would outlast time. In South America, myths tell of Viracocha, a tall, pale god with a radiant crown, who emerged from Lake Titicaca after the flood. He taught the Andean people how to cut stone and align temples with the stars. And in Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl was said to have come from across the sea after a great darkness. He gave the people agriculture, astronomy, and the calendar, thousands of miles apart, yet all described the same arrival, the same rebirth, the builder's mark. Wherever these teachers went, they left the same signature behind, monuments of impossible precision, aligned with the heavens. Let's follow their trail. In the highlands of Peru lies Sacsayhuaman, a fortress of interlocking stones so precisely fitted that a knife blade cannot pass between them. Each block weighs up to 300 tons. Modern engineers admit we could not replicate it easily today. Not with cranes, not with lasers, not at that altitude. In Bolivia, at Pumapunku, stones lie scattered like the remains of a destroyed factory. Perfectly drilled holes, smooth faces, and right angles within microns. To the Inca, it was built before the sun rose in our age. Across the ocean, in Lebanon, the Temple of Baalbek rests on a foundation of 3 stones, each weighing nearly 1,000 tons. They call them the trilithon. No ancient tool could lift them, yet there they stand, precise, level, eternal. And then there's Giza, the greatest of them all. For centuries we've called them tombs. But inside, no mummies were ever found. No inscriptions, no funerary markings, nothing to suggest they were graves. So if not tombs, then what? Geometry of the gods. When measured carefully, the Great Pyramid's proportions encode numbers that should have been unknown in the ancient world. Its height to base ratio equals 2 pi, the relationship between a circle and its diameter. Its sides align perfectly to true north, more precisely than any modern building. And when multiplied by scale, its perimeter matches the circumference of the Earth within a fraction of a percent. Coincidence? Or memory? How could the builders have known the size of the planet, the tilt of its axis, or the precession of the equinoxes, unless this was knowledge carried through the flood? The same ratios appear in Tiwanaku, in Teotihuacan, in Angkor Wat, in Stonehenge. Different builders, same blueprint. The universal plan. What if these structures were not separate inventions but fragments of one global design, the work of a civilization that once circled the globe, its knowledge scattered when the cataclysm came? Every culture remembers an age when gods built with stone and light, when humanity lived in harmony with the sky. After the flood, that wisdom splintered, each survivor remembering only part of the whole. The Egyptians remembered astronomy. The Sumerians remembered writing. The Mayans remembered time. The Hindus remembered vibration and sound. Together, these fragments form a single picture, a science that merged matter, energy, and consciousness. A forgotten science, the resonance of stone. Every megalithic site, from the pyramids to Stonehenge, shares one hidden feature: resonance. When you speak or chant inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, the walls hum at 440 Hz, the frequency of the human voice. At Tiwanaku, deep bass tones reverberate through hollow chambers carved from solid rock. In Malta, the hypogeum of Halsaflini amplifies low sound frequencies so powerfully that visitors report feeling vibrations in their bones. These sites were not just built to be seen. They were built to sing. Modern researchers now realize that sound can change the state of matter, a phenomenon called cymatics. Sand on a vibrating plate forms geometric patterns. Water vibrates into spirals. Frequency creates form. Perhaps the ancients knew this, how to use vibration to move, cut, or even levitate stone. Could that be why so many legends speak of songs that moved mountains and tones that raised temples? Maybe the builders of knowledge did not use machines. They used harmonics, teachers or survivors. The question then becomes, who were they? Were they gods, aliens, or simply humans, survivors of a civilization advanced in ways we no longer understand? If they were the last scientists of the old world, their goal wouldn't have been to rule, but to remember, to preserve what they could. to restart the light of knowledge before it faded forever. That's why their symbols repeat across the globe: serpents, stars, eyes, suns, spirals. Not religions, but memories. Codes left for the future. Maybe they knew this cycle would come again, that civilization rises and falls like the tides, that each age forgets what the last one knew. And maybe that's why they built in stone, because stone remembers the silence of time. Thousands of years later, we still walk among their works. We measure their geometry. We debate their purpose. But we rarely ask the most important question: what if they succeeded? What if the world we live in now is not the first civilization but the second or the 10th? What if we are their descendants, living among their ruins, mistaking their science for myth? The builders of knowledge are gone, but their fingerprints are everywhere. In the stones, in the stars, in the stories we tell ourselves. And if they were real, if their knowledge survived the cataclysm, then the next question is inevitable. Where did they go when the world began again? In the next chapter, we search for them, the age of giants, and the beings who may have carried that knowledge through the darkness. When the survivors rebuilt the world, legends say they were not alone. Across every continent, stories begin to speak of enormous beings, creatures of great strength and radiant presence, who helped shape the new dawn after the flood. The Greeks called them Titans. The Bible named them Nephilim, those who fell from the heavens. In the Americas, they were the thunder giants, builders of ancient mounds. The Norse sang of the Jotnar, taller than mountains, older than men. Different tongues, same memory. But were these stories metaphor or memory? Shadows in the stone. In the high deserts of Peru, petroglyphs show human figures standing beside beings twice their size. In Sardinia, chamber tombs called Tomb dei Giganti, tombs of the giants, stretch longer than city buses. In the American Midwest, early settlers wrote of skeletons of unusual height, found in earthen mounds before they were cleared for farms. Most of these tales have vanished into folklore. Many were exaggerated or misread. Yet the repetition is striking. Why did every early culture imagine giants teaching, ruling, or protecting humankind? And why always do the stories end the same way, with their destruction in fire and flood? The forgotten genealogy. Ancient texts describe the giants not as monsters, but as offspring, hybrids of gods and mortals. In the Book of Enoch, the sons of heaven took wives among the daughters of men, and their children grew tall and strong. When their pride grew too great, the Creator sent the deluge to cleanse the world. The Sumerians told it differently. The Anunnaki bred with humans to restore their fading bloodline. The result was a generation of immense stature and intellect, the men of renown. Maybe these stories are the same event told through different eyes, the memory of beings who survived the cataclysm but could no longer remain among ordinary men. Bones and myths. Modern archaeology rarely speaks of giants. Most early discoveries were mismeasurements, legends built from animal bones or tall warriors. But scattered through history are finds that continue to tease curiosity. Castelnau, France, 1890s enormous limb bones measuring over a meter long. Bolivia's Tiwanaku, blocks carved with humanoid figures twice human height. Egyptian legends of colossal sarcophagi in Saqqara, too large for any man. Exaggeration? Maybe. Yet the idea of an earlier, stronger race endures because it explains something we can still see, the scale of ancient architecture. Who could have moved the trilithon at Baalbek? Who carved the 10-ton pillars of Göbekli Tepe with stone hammers? Were they ordinary humans? Or the last of those giants remembered in myth? The symbolic giant. There's another way to see it. Perhaps giants were not giants of flesh, but of mind, humans whose understanding towered above the rest. To the scattered tribes, their knowledge would have seemed supernatural. When a builder could lift a block no one else could move, or make the earth vibrate with sound, how else could the witnesses describe him except giant? Every legend exaggerates truth to protect it. Maybe the age of giants is how memory preserved the time when knowledge itself was colossal. The teachers who left. As the centuries passed, the stories say the giants began to fade. Some returned to the heavens. Some sank into the earth. Some were turned to stone. Across the world, megalithic statues stand like their shadows. The Moai of Easter Island, the Olmec heads, the colossi of Memnon. They face the horizon as if waiting for something, or remembering. If those figures mark where the giants once stood, perhaps they were monuments of farewell, a way for mankind to honor the ones who rebuilt the world after the flood, the science they left behind. Every site linked to the legends of giants shares the same fingerprints. Impossible stonework, harmonic acoustics, stellar alignment. The builders measured the heavens as if they knew them intimately. They shaped stone to withstand quakes and centuries of erosion. They seemed to understand gravity and frequency in ways we still study. This was not brute strength alone. It was engineering science expressed through myth. If we peel away the poetry, the giants may represent those few who retained the science of the lost world. The guardians of knowledge who became gods in memory and legends in time. The question that remains: if the age of giants truly ended in the great cataclysm, did they vanish completely? Or did fragments of their wisdom survive? Hidden in temples, encoded in stone, waiting to be rediscovered? Every generation rediscovers part of what the ancients knew. Every monument whispers the same question: will you remember? Or will you forget again? In the next chapter, we step beyond legend and look at that forgotten science itself. The measurements, the harmonics, the geometry that hint at a mastery of energy we are only beginning to understand. What if the stories of gods and giants weren't describing miracles, but technology? Not the machines of steel and wire we imagine today, but a science that worked with the earth, not against it. A science of resonance, of sound, light, magnetism, and thought. For thousands of years, fragments of that knowledge have slept in plain sight, carved into temples, whispered in myths, encoded in the stars. And maybe, just maybe, we are starting to remember the music of the earth. Every ancient culture believed the earth itself produces sound, a low, constant hum. Modern scientists now call it the Schumann resonance, a natural frequency that vibrates around 7.83 Hz, circling the globe like a heartbeat. Ancient builders somehow knew this. Their temples, from the Great Pyramid to Stonehenge, were tuned to those same frequencies. When sound waves bounce between the Earth and the ionosphere, they form standing waves, invisible harmonies that travel around the world. And when ancient temples are built in geometric harmony with those vibrations, they act like amplifiers, turning energy into resonance. Could that explain why some sacred sites still produce strange sensations? Pressure in the ears, tingling skin, or feelings of calm and awe? Perhaps those places weren't holy because gods lived there. They were holy because the earth sang through them. Sound as power. In the modern world, we know that sound can move matter. In laboratories, acoustic levitation can make droplets of water float in midair. High-frequency waves can cut metal, heal tissue, or even destroy tumors. But in the ancient world, the same principle may have been used on a grander scale. Legends from Egypt speak of priests chanting to lift stones. In Tibet, monks use drums and horns to make entire cliffs vibrate. In Malta's underground hypogeum, a single voice creates a deep resonance that seems to echo through bone rather than air. If we combine all these clues, a picture begins to form. One where sound wasn't just music. It was mechanics, a technology of tone. Perhaps that's how the builders of knowledge shaped massive stones so precisely, by using resonance to soften or shift matter at the atomic level. An ancient science of vibration, rediscovered now under a new name: sonic engineering, the code of light. But sound was only one part of their science. Light and the way it interacts with matter was another. In Egypt, sunlight enters the king's chamber at specific angles during equinoxes, reflecting along polished limestone surfaces that once gleamed like mirrors. At Newgrange in Ireland, a narrow beam of sunlight penetrates a dark chamber only on the winter solstice, illuminating spirals carved thousands of years before recorded history. In Peru, the Temple of the Sun aligns perfectly with the rising and setting of the stars in Orion's belt. Across the world, ancient builders created optical machines from stone, devices designed not just to capture light, but to measure and manipulate it. They tracked the heavens with precision we still struggle to match. They understood the energy of the sun as more than warmth. It was information, frequency, rhythm. To them, light and sound were not separate forces. They were one language, the language of the universe, the hidden blueprint. When we look closer, the same mathematical fingerprints appear again and again. Ratios like 1 minute and 1.618 seconds, the golden mean. Numbers like 108, 216, 432, repeated in temples, pyramids, and scriptures across continents. These numbers describe vibration, orbital motion, and waveforms, the geometry of existence itself. The ancients used them not as superstition, but as code, a bridge between energy and form. The Great Pyramid, for example, encodes the speed of light, the circumference of Earth, and the ratio of the Moon's orbit, all within its measurements. The same constants appear in Angkor Wat, Borobudur, and Chichen Itza, as if every sacred site is part of one vast equation, carved in stone. They weren't guessing. They were remembering. The science of consciousness. Modern science is only beginning to explore what the ancients already practiced. The power of the mind to influence matter. Neuroscientists now confirm that brainwaves produce measurable electromagnetic fields, frequencies that can sync with other systems. When groups meditate together, their brainwave patterns synchronize, forming coherence across distance. Ancient initiates called this oneness with the cosmos. Today, we call it quantum entanglement. Perhaps the forgotten science was not just about stone and sound, but about consciousness as a force of creation. Maybe those ancient builders didn't just construct temples. They tuned them to human thought, creating places where mind and matter could meet. Healers, not magicians. In texts from India, Greece, and Egypt, the first scientists were also priests, healers who used tone, color, and geometry to restore balance. Their instruments weren't scalpels or chemicals, but frequencies. They understood that disease was disharmony, and healing was the act of retuning. The temples at Dendra and Edfu were not just places of worship. They were hospitals of resonance, where sound, light, and aroma combined to realign the body's energy fields. Today, modern medicine is rediscovering this idea through sound therapy, vibrational medicine, and frequency healing. The ancient science we call myth may soon return as the future of health. The web of the builders. From Göbekli Tepe to the pyramids, from the Andes to the Himalayas, every ancient monument sits on what scientists now call telluric currents, natural electromagnetic lines that flow through the Earth's crust. These currents carry energy, much like veins carry blood. The ancients built on these nodes intentionally, creating a global network of resonant structures that balance the planet's energy grid. It's no coincidence that sacred sites align across continents. When mapped, they trace what researchers call ley lines. To modern ears, it sounds mystical. To ancient minds, it was just physics, Earth's magnetic breath harnessed and harmonized. Perhaps that's why they said the gods walked upon the dragon lines, because those lines were power itself. When knowledge became myth, but somewhere along the way the knowledge fractured. Empires rose and fell. Languages changed. The builder's code, once known to all, became sacred, secret, forbidden. By the time of Greece and Rome, vibration had become music. Light became divinity. Geometry became sacred art. And the unified science of sound, light, and consciousness became mythology. The temple builders became gods. Their tools became miracles. And their science became legend, the echo of memory. Yet even today, when we stand in those ancient places, something stirs. A hum too low to hear, a sense of presence that logic can't explain. Maybe those stones still remember their builders. Maybe those frequencies still whisper across the air, waiting for minds quiet enough to listen. Because somewhere in that silence lies the same power the ancients once held, the ability to shape reality through harmony. A science so vast it could move mountains. A science so subtle it could heal with a song. A science so ancient it became myth. And if we learn to listen again, maybe we'll remember what they never truly forgot. In the next chapter, we explore where that knowledge went, how it resurfaced in mystery schools, in lost manuscripts, and in the secret brotherhoods that claimed descent from the first builders. The chain of memory was never broken, only hidden. When the age of the builders faded, the world entered twilight. Empires rose on their ruins. The knowledge that once sang in stone became whispers, passed in secret, guarded by those who still remembered the power of harmony. These were the keepers of the light, the mystery schools, the secret brotherhoods that carried fragments of the old science through fire, war, and time. Their temples became classrooms. Their symbols became codes. And their silence, protection. From temples to teachings. In the ancient world, knowledge was not written, it was lived. Only those who proved discipline, humility, and purity were initiated into the deeper mysteries. In Egypt, these initiates trained for years beneath the gaze of the pyramids, learning the sciences of vibration, geometry, and energy. They studied in the House of Life at Heliopolis, the city of the sun, where priests of Thoth preserved the secret of light and sound. They learned to measure time through the motion of stars, to align the heart with the pulse of the earth, and to awaken the inner senses. To outsiders, they were magicians. To those within, they were scientists of the soul. Their teachings would later echo in the philosophies of Greece, India, and even Renaissance Europe, echoes of an older science spoken in a language of symbols. The journey of the wisdom keepers. When the Nile kingdoms declined, their priests carried sacred scrolls to new lands, to the deserts of Arabia, the islands of Crete, the mountains of Anatolia. In Babylon, they became the Chaldean Magi, astronomers who studied the heavens to predict the rhythms of fate. In Persia, they became the fire keepers, tenders of eternal flames representing divine consciousness. In Greece, they emerged as the Pythagoreans, followers of a philosopher who claimed numbers were the fabric of reality. Pythagoras didn't invent his teachings, he inherited them. He traveled to Egypt, learned in the temples of Thebes, and returned with the sacred geometry that would later form the basis of Western science and music. Even Plato, in his dialogues, described Atlantis, not as myth but as history told by Egyptian priests. They called it the island that fell beneath the sea, destroyed when the gods lost harmony with the cosmos. The chain of memory stretched unbroken, from the age of the builders to the dawn of modern thought. The secret architecture. Every temple, cathedral, and shrine built in their image carried a hidden pattern, a code of vibration. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid mirrored the stars of Orion. In Greece, the Parthenon embodied the golden ratio. In Europe, Gothic cathedrals had harmonic ratios in their arches, windows, and bells, all designed to make worshippers feel awe, resonance, and peace. The very stones of Notre Dame, Chartres, and Rosslyn Chapel hum with proportion. Each arch, each angle is a frozen chord. To the faithful, they were houses of God. To the initiated, they were instruments of sound and light, descendants of the temples of old. The builder's knowledge had not vanished. It had simply changed its name. The mystery schools of the ancient world. Every civilization had its keepers of hidden truth. In Egypt, the initiates of Thoth. In Greece, the Eleusinian mysteries, which taught rebirth and cosmic order. In Persia, the Mithraic Brotherhood, whose 7 stages of initiation reflected the 7 planetary spheres. In India, the Rishis, sages who spoke of the sacred vibration Om as the sound of creation itself. And in every one of these schools, the goal was the same: to remember the lost harmony between the human and the divine, the mind and the cosmos, the body and the planet. Each student was told, "The universe is not outside you. You are the universe remembering itself." The Brotherhoods of the West. When Rome conquered Egypt, the last temples of true initiation closed their doors. But the knowledge didn't die, it went underground. For centuries, it traveled through alchemy, Kabbalah, and the Hermetic tradition, all claiming descent from Hermes Trismegistus, the Egyptian Thoth. They hid their wisdom in symbols: serpents, eyes, suns, and compasses. During the Renaissance, these teachings resurfaced through secret brotherhoods, Rosicrucians, Templars, and Freemasons. They spoke of the great work, the restoration of the ancient science that united matter and spirit. Their lodges were not political. They were laboratories studying proportion, architecture, vibration, and transformation. They believed that by understanding the geometry of the universe, one could awaken the geometry of the soul. In their cathedrals, in their rituals, in their art, the builders lived again. The hidden light in modern science. What's astonishing is how modern discoveries now echo their forgotten knowledge. Quantum physics shows that matter is vibration, every particle a wave of probability. Neuroscience proves that thought alters reality at the subatomic level. And string theory describes the universe as music, vibrating filaments of energy forming everything we see. Thousands of years ago, the initiates said the same thing. All is sound, all is light, all is mind. Perhaps what we call science today is simply the rediscovery of the same universal truths the ancients already knew, stripped of their symbols, purified by time. Why the knowledge was hidden. But why hide it? Why not share it openly with the world? Because the builders knew power without balance leads to ruin. They had seen it happen before, when the old civilization misused its science and summoned the flood. So they buried their wisdom in myth and ritual, accessible only to those who sought truth for service, not control. It wasn't secrecy for pride, it was protection. They believed that humanity must first awaken morally before it could awaken scientifically. Maybe that's why they built in stone instead of words. Because stones do not lie. They wait. The eternal flame. In every age, there are those who rediscover fragments of this ancient fire. Mystics, scientists, visionaries. Some build machines. Some write books. Some simply dream. But all of them are sparks from the same source, the hidden schools of light, the silent lineage that connects our modern world to the first civilization that ever was. And maybe when we feel that pull toward the stars, when music stirs something ancient within us, when geometry or pattern or symmetry gives us peace, it's because a part of us still remembers the old harmony. The hidden schools never died. They live wherever truth is sought for love, not power. And their greatest secret has always been the simplest. To know the universe, you must become still enough to hear it sing. In the next chapter, we ask the question that binds it all together. If this knowledge was once global, if the builders were real, then where did they come from? Were they children of Earth, or visitors from the stars who left behind the blueprint for our awakening? Long before the first written word, before the first city rose from clay, humanity looked to the heavens and wondered, who are we? Where did we come from? And who were the beings that came before us? Across every ancient culture, the answer was the same. We came from the stars. The Egyptians said the gods descended from Sirius. The Sumerians spoke of Anunnaki, the shining ones who came down from the heavens. The Dogon tribe of Mali described visitors from a distant star invisible to the naked eye, the companion star of Sirius, which modern telescopes confirmed only in the 20th century. How did they know? The sky gods. When you look deep into the oldest myths, one pattern repeats. Beings of light, descending from the sky, teaching humanity laws, language, and knowledge. In Sumer, they were Enki and Enlil, brothers who shaped humanity from clay and gave them the breath of life. In Egypt, they were Osiris and Isis, descending from the heavens to bring order to chaos. In the Andes, they were Viracocha, emerging from the sea after fire fell from the sky. different names, one truth. These gods were not creators in the divine sense. They were teachers, engineers, scientists, visitors, the language of the stars. Many ancient temples weren't just aligned with the sun. They mirrored the stars. The pyramids of Giza match the belt of Orion. Teotihuacan's layout echoes the same constellation. The temples of Angkor what trace the pattern of Draco. In the Andes, the ruins of Tiwanaku align with Sirius and the Pleiades. If this was simple coincidence, it happened on every continent, in the same millennia under completely different cultures. Why did early builders create cosmic mirrors of the heavens they saw? Because perhaps those stars were home, the origin of the gods they worshipped, the teachers they awaited to return. The Watchers. In the ancient Hebrew book of Enoch, a group of celestial beings called the Watchers descended to earth. They taught humankind the arts of civilization, metallurgy, medicine, astronomy. But over time, they defiled themselves with the daughters of men, creating the race of giants. When their knowledge was misused, chaos followed, and the great flood erased their traces. The word for watchers in Aramaic is ir, literally meaning those who watch the heavens. Even the term angel in ancient Greek, angelos, means messenger. Could the Watchers have been messengers from another world? Astronomers, navigators, or explorers who came to study Earth and found a species worthy of awakening. Technology or divinity. Imagine a primitive tribe seeing an aircraft for the first time. The sound, the light, the descent from the sky. To them, it would look divine. Now imagine that same event, 10,000 years ago. Could that explain why so many myths describe chariots of fire, shining discs, and luminous beings wrapped in light? Not as gods, but as technological visitors whose arrival was remembered through the only language early humans had, myth. Even the word glory, in old texts often translates to radiance, perhaps describing energy or light emitted by something beyond comprehension. When the Maya carved feathered serpents flying across the sky, were they describing gods or craft? When the Vedic texts spoke of Vimanas, cities of light that soared among the clouds, were they telling stories or recounting memory, the blueprint for civilization? Every major leap in human history, agriculture, architecture, writing, astronomy, appears almost instantly after the Younger Dryas cataclysm. No gradual evolution, no experimentation, just sudden genius. Where did it come from? The Sumerians claimed they were taught by beings from Nibiru, a wandering planet that passes near Earth every few millennia. The Egyptians said the wisdom of the gods came from the island of the followers of Horus. The Dogon claimed their ancestors were guided by amphibious beings from Sirius who taught them the cycles of stars. If these are only stories, they are eerily consistent. It's as if the same knowledge was gifted to humanity across time, by a single source. The star maps in stone. Hidden in the architecture of ancient monuments are patterns that mirror the night sky. At Nabta Playa in southern Egypt, megaliths older than Stonehenge align with the rising of Sirius and Orion's belt, around 10,500 BC, the very time the Great Cataclysm ended. At Göbekli Tepe, the carved animals correspond exactly to constellations visible during that same epoch. In Mexico, the Temple of the Feathered Serpent mirrors the motion of Venus, a planet sacred to nearly every ancient culture. These were not coincidences. They were messages, sky maps carved in stone to remind future generations. We came from the stars. You are our children. Remember where you began. Lost contacts. If ancient visitors once came here, where did they go? Some myths say they returned to the heavens, promising to return when humanity was ready. Others say they fell, trapped within the earth, within matter itself, waiting for consciousness to rise again. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps the return of the gods doesn't mean ships descending from the sky, but humanity rising to their level of understanding. Maybe awakening is the real contact, the universal symbol. Everywhere, the same symbol appears, a circle with a dot in its center. In Egypt, it meant the sun. In India, it meant the cosmic seed. In astronomy, it means the source. And in ancient initiation, it meant the point of contact, where the divine meets the human. It is the oldest emblem of enlightenment, the place where the builders once stood halfway between heaven and earth. The return of the sky teachers. In recent years, astronomers have discovered thousands of Earth-like planets orbiting distant stars. Signals have been detected, repeating radio bursts, structured patterns within cosmic noise. We call them fast radio bursts, or FRBs, brief, powerful flashes of energy lasting only milliseconds, coming from galaxies billions of light-years away. They could be natural, or they could be messages. Each one is like a whisper in the cosmic dark. And as our technology grows more sensitive, the whispers are getting louder. Could the universe itself be alive, communicating in patterns, frequencies, and light? Or are we finally beginning to hear the builders again? The message written in us. Modern genetics has uncovered something equally mysterious. Traces in human DNA that don't fully match known hominin ancestors. Some researchers call it ghost DNA. Sequences that seem older than Homo sapiens themselves. Could these be the biological echoes of an ancient encounter? A merging of species earthborn and starborn, long before recorded time? Maybe that's why we dream of the stars. Because part of us remembers them. We are not separate from the cosmos. We are its children. Its experiment, its memory, and its promise. The whisper between stars. When we look up at the night sky, we see light that's traveled for billions of years. We are seeing the past, but maybe we're also being seen. Every signal we send, every radio wave, every broadcast, every thought, moves outward forever. Somewhere, something might be listening. And perhaps, somewhere out there, the descendants of those first visitors still wait, watching our progress, listening for the moment when we finally remember their song. Because maybe the true contact won't come through telescopes or machines, but through resonance, when humanity vibrates again at the same frequency as the stars. The builders called it harmony. The ancients called it enlightenment. Modern science calls it consciousness. Different words, same truth. We were never abandoned. We were only asleep. And now, as we open our eyes to the cosmos, we might finally see what the universe has been whispering all along. Welcome back, children of the stars. Every great story of creation has one thing in common. It isn't a beginning, it's a return. Civilizations rise, flourish, fall, and are reborn, not by chance but by design. Like the heartbeat of the universe, humanity moves in rhythm with cosmic cycles far greater than any empire or age. And now, as we stand on the threshold of a new dawn, the question returns. Is history repeating itself? Or awakening itself? The pulse of the ages. Ancient astronomers believed that time was not a straight line, but a circle. To them, the heavens were a clock, the stars marking epochs called great years. The Earth, as it wobbles on its axis, traces a slow motion through the sky, a 26,000-year cycle known today as the precession of the equinoxes. Every 13,000 years, the axis points to a different pole star. Every 13,000 years, the world passes through light and shadow, an age of awakening followed by an age of forgetting. According to the myths, we are now near the turning point, the same point that marked the fall of the last great civilization around 11,000 BC. The wheel is turning again, the golden and the dark. The ancients divided human history into 4 ages: golden, silver, bronze, and iron. The golden age was a time of harmony, when gods walked with men and knowledge flowed freely. The iron age was the time of darkness, when greed replaced wisdom and memory was lost. Each cycle, they said, ends with a cleansing, a flood, a fire, an alignment of heavens, and then begins anew. Plato wrote of this, describing how the gods, when the world forgets itself, send destruction, that order may return. In the Vedic texts of India, the same teaching appears as the Yuga cycle, a cosmic breath of creation and dissolution. Could it be that the cataclysm of 11,000 BC was not an ending, but a reset? A necessary silence before the next awakening? The astronomical clock. Modern science has quietly rediscovered what the ancients already knew. Every few thousand years, Earth passes through regions of space charged with cosmic radiation. Regions that affect weather, magnetism, and even human consciousness. Around every 12,000 years, there's evidence of massive solar activity. Flares, magnetic storms, and sudden climate shifts. The last one coincided with the Younger Dryas event, the Great Flood. And the next cycle? Peaks now. Solar scientists note we're entering one of the most active phases of our star's history. Geomagnetic fields are shifting. Auroras appear where they never have before. And human technology, from satellites to power grids, sits fragile beneath the sky's growing pulse. Once again, the heavens are stirring. The return of memory. But perhaps the true awakening isn't destruction. It's remembrance. All over the world, humans are rediscovering fragments of the old knowledge. We're learning that sound heals, that frequency shapes form, that consciousness connects all things, that geometry is not art, but the blueprint of life. It's as if the builder's science is resurfacing, not through priests or monuments this time, but through us. Maybe that's what the ancients meant by the return of the gods. Not beings descending from the stars, but humanity rising into awareness. We are remembering what we used to be, the fractured mirror. Still, awakening is never easy. It breaks illusions. It shakes the world before rebuilding it. Our age is filled with noise, data, power, distraction. But beneath it, something deeper hums. You can feel it when the world pauses, when you stare at the night sky and sense something watching back. That hum, that resonance, is the same frequency that once guided the builders. The same rhythm that moved the oceans and the stars. The same whisper that told ancient priests when to build and when to bury. Still there. It never left. We just forgot how to listen. The architects of the next age. If the cycles are real, then the pattern suggests that after every collapse, a new civilization arises, more connected, more aware, more aligned with the cosmic pulse. Maybe we are those builders now, the ones meant to restore harmony between technology and spirit, between science and soul. Our temples are no longer made of stone. They are made of data, of connection, of shared thought. But the geometry is the same: circles, frequencies, harmonics. When humanity finally learns to balance progress with wisdom, creation with compassion, we may rediscover the very force the ancients used, the vibration that unites mind and matter, the science of the gods reborn through us, the great remembering. Myths say the last age ended with water. This one may end with light, because light, truth, always returns. The builders of knowledge, the sages of fire, the watchers of the sky, they left a message not in words, but in cycles. When the heavens shift and memory returns, the children of earth will awaken again. Maybe that time is now. You can feel it in your bones, that quiet urge to seek, to understand, to remember. The sense that humanity is standing at a doorway it cannot yet see, but somehow already knows. The final lesson. Every temple, every myth, every mystery leads to one truth. We are not separate from the universe. We are the universe, awakening to itself. The gods we once worshipped were never outside us. They were what we could become. The age of giants was the age of greatness within. The forgotten science was the memory of connection. And the cycles of awakening are not punishments. They are reminders. Reminders that even after darkness, the stars always return. So, when you look up tonight, remember the builders. Remember the flood, the fire, the stone, the song. Because within you, within every heartbeat, the same ancient rhythm still plays. And somewhere, in that silence between breaths, the universe still whispers, "You were never lost. You were only waiting to remember." Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe. Listen. Beneath the hum of the world, beneath the noise of thought, there's a sound, quiet, constant, eternal. It's the same sound that moved through the temples of stone, that vibrated through the hearts of the builders, that whispered through the galaxies long before the first sun was born. It is the sound of memory, the memory of the stars, the thread of light. Every atom in your body was once dust inside a collapsing star. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen you breathe, all were forged in cosmic fire, billions of years before your birth. You are not looking at the universe. You are the universe looking back at itself. The ancients understood this. That's why they built monuments that reached for the heavens. Not to worship the stars, but to remember they were made of them. The Great Pyramid's apex once shone under the Sirius star system, not to ask for light but to reflect it. Every temple was a mirror, every prayer a resonance, every story a fragment of remembrance. They knew what modern science is only beginning to rediscover, that everything is connected, that thought itself bends reality, that the line between spirit and matter is just vibration. The builders within. You are the descendant of those who remembered. In your DNA sleeps their geometry, their rhythm, their music. When you feel awe under the stars, when a melody moves you to tears, when silence feels sacred, it's them stirring in your memory. Because the builders never left. They became you. The same curiosity that lifted stones into pyramids now lifts satellites into orbit. The same search for harmony that carved sound into temples now turns vibration into technology. The same longing that drew eyes to Orion still burns in every dreamer staring at the night sky. The cycle is complete. The children of the gods have become the gods they once sought. The river of time. Time flows, but memory remains. The myths were never about the past, they were about the pattern. Floods, fires, endings, beginnings. All part of a rhythm older than the earth itself. The builders of knowledge understood that to survive forever, they didn't need immortality. They needed remembrance. So they planted their message in stone, in sound, in story, and in you. Because memory isn't what you hold, it's what holds you. The great silence. The universe is vast, but not empty. Between every star, every wave of radiation, every silent vacuum, there's information. Music too slow for us to hear, light too faint for us to see. One day we may finally learn to translate it. But perhaps the builders already did. Perhaps they didn't listen to the universe, they listened with it. And maybe that's the secret we've been searching for, not to conquer the cosmos, but to remember we are part of its song. The return. When the ancients said, "The gods will return," they didn't mean ships descending from the sky. They meant the awakening of awareness, a time when humanity remembers its origin and purpose. That time is now. We are rediscovering what they knew, that harmony is not something you seek. It is something you become. When your heart beats in rhythm with the earth, when your thoughts align with compassion, when you look at the stars and feel peace instead of fear, you are living the science of the gods, the last whisper. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine the builders, standing beneath the same sky thousands of years ago, their faces lit by the same constellations that watch over you now. They too wondered who they were. They too searched for meaning. And in their search, they left behind a message. Do not forget, you are the light that remembers itself. Let that truth echo through your dreams. Let it hum beneath your breath, like the pulse of distant stars calling you home. Because you are not small. You are not lost. You are the continuation of everything that ever was. And when you wake, the universe will open its eyes through you.